So Wemby is breaking the NBA, man. He's playing so great that people are starting to have real conversations about him winning DPOY as a rookie. But a lot of other people are pushing back on this agenda. And honestly, I think it's dumb to do so.
Victor Wembanyama is doing something the league has never seen before. The 20-year-old rookie from France is in second place to win Defensive Player of the Year behind another player from France, Rudy Gobert. But maybe he should win. Let's look at the stats to compare both candidates. First, we can look at steals and blocks, or stocks for short. Rudy Gobert comes in at 175 stocks. Then we see Victor Wembanyama sitting way above at 276 stocks, a little over 100 ahead of Gobert.
That's ridiculous. I'm gonna be honest with you. That's crazy, outrageous. Like, I understand, like, we're gonna have a whole conversation about wins and losses and where a team ranks defensively. But at some point, bro, if you are so far ahead of a lot of other people, especially the leading candidate in some of these metrics and some of these numbers, at some point that gotta come into consideration. Like, at some point we have to sit here and say, bro, like, the numbers he's posting up, the things that he's doing are so outrageous that, like, why can't he? Like, why can't he? Why is it that he cannot do it? I don't know, but like the steals and blocks though, bro, this man Wemby's going out there having like 7 block games, 5 block games pretty often, pretty routinely. Like, very clearly, just if you just watch him, he's ridiculous, bro. This is just another example of just how ridiculously great he is statistically in, again, very important defensive metrics, and it's not even like really close.
Next, we look at defensive win shares. Defensive win shares say how well a player effectively impacts wins on the defensive side of the ball. Gobert comes in at a staggering 10.7 defensive win share, while Victor comes in at a flat 6 this season. Interesting. Finally, we can look at defensive field goal percentage. Defensive field goal percentage is how well a player shoots while being guarded by this player. Gobert comes in at a 43% defensive field goal percentage, and Victor comes in slightly behind at 46.6%, almost 4% worse than Gobert.
Now, I want people to understand, especially when it comes to like defensive win shares and defensive ratings, also like having, holding your opponent to 46% is also very, very impressive. Like, let's not poo-poo, and to be fair, I think Rudy Gobert is a leading candidate, but let's not act as if like that 4% difference is significant. Like, it ain't really all that significant. Holding your opponent, like when you are defending somebody to 46% from the field, is actually very impressive. But like other defensive metrics like defensive win shares or defensive rating, like a lot of that is very dependent on how good your team is as a whole defensively in some capacity. So like, sure, I think in more team-oriented stats, yes, Wemby's going to fall short because he's on a bad defensive team, but that doesn't necessarily mean like he himself is a bad defender. Also, even though I just talked a lot about, blocks and steals, stocks, defense is a very, very specific and particular type of thing when we're communicating on how good someone is defensively. And I actually big up Rudy Gobert in many of these regards because people like love to just slander Rudy over and over and over again. Like Shaq has been doing it recently too, where it's like, oh, you need to do da-da-da-da. And it's like, bro, you have to just watch the games and see what's happening defensively, because there's a lot of things that happens on the floor that just doesn't show up on any metric. There is no metric that show the impact that somebody has defensively. Like if I'm holding somebody and they just decide not to shoot because that's how good I am defending them, that doesn't show up on the box score at all. There's no metric for that whatsoever. Or another example is when somebody's like driving into the lane and they may reconsider what should normally just be an easy look at the basket. They reconsider it because they're constantly concerned about a shot blocker near them. Like those things don't show up on the stat sheet at all, but that is defense. Like the ability to alter and intimidate the opposing team and persuade them on not taking certain shots doesn't show up on the stat sheet, but it's all a part of defense. So I don't want to get too caught up too much in the metrics, but the simple fact that Wemby is on par in some of these numbers with Rudy Gobert really speaks to why this conversation should be at least a valid one.
Victor leads in the counting stats by a large margin, but the advanced stats lean Gobert's direction. I think it's close, but looking at this, who do you think should be the Defensive Player of the Year?
So yeah, I think that it's much closer. I think people acting as if like it's not a conversation is crazy. But Draymond Green himself, he has something to say about this because I think he probably feels a little bit bitter about this conversation, especially taking into consideration why he may not have won as many DPOYs throughout his career that he probably believes he should have.
His last 20 games, he's still averaging 29 minutes per game, 23 points, 10.4 rebounds, 4.5 assists, almost 2 steals, and 4 blocks. On 49% from the field, 40 from 3 and 83 from the line. He's currently second in odds to win Defensive Player of the Year, although I can't quite agree with that because they have the 24th best defense in the league. Now, that's where you kind of get into like his team is not that good, they're young, and blah, 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 but what he's doing is incredible. But you just can't move the line like that. Like, you're not allowed to, just because he's young and the team is bad, a guy on the 24th best defense in the league can win Defensive Player of the Year. I don't agree with that.
Now, this is the part where I just don't understand this at all, because this is like where we get into this logic of like, and it's especially Draymond, because this is a bit hypocritical of Draymond as well. Draymond, you are a part of this movement of new media where we make assessments based off of our intelligence, not based off of what the old media was telling us how we're supposed to vote. The old media will look at somebody and say, hey, let's look at where your team ranks defensively, and that's how we're going to judge you as a player, despite the fact that we all know that Wemby is on a bad defensive team. He's on a bad defensive roster. He's on a bad defensive unit. That has nothing to do with him whatsoever. And what's even worse is that when Wemby is on the floor versus when he's off the floor, the team actually looks significantly better defensively. So just so everyone knows, as I record this video, the Spurs have the 23rd best defense in the NBA. At the bottom, right? Bottom 10 defense with a defensive rating of 117.8, right? So that's their team as a whole. Now, when Wemby is on the floor for the season, the Spurs have a defensive rating of 111. 111. They have a defensive rating of 111. If you don't know, if you had a defensive rating of 111 in the NBA, that means that you would have the second best defense in the association. When Wemby is on the floor, they have the second best defense in the league. And when he is off it, it goes from 111 to 120. If you had a 120 defense, you would be bottom 3. That's the Wemby impact. When he is on the floor, they are a top 2 defense. They are on par with the Minnesota Timberwolves, the Boston Celtics, etc., etc. When he's off it, they are literally one of the worst defenses in the NBA. They are literally bottom 3. That's ridiculous. And be very mindful, Wemby is basically playing, like you said, 29, 30 minutes on a night-to-night basis. That means within that 18-minute stretch, in the 18 minutes he's off the floor, they are literally the worst defense. You can argue they're probably the worst defense in the NBA. Wemby turns them to an elite defense, and when he's off the floor, they're one of the worst. That's ridiculous. So to sit here and just blindly look at someone, oh, what is a defensive rating for them? Like, no, it's very, very obvious that the team's defensive rating is that bad because of how bad everybody else is defensively, not because of Wemby.
I don't put much into that because you're a rookie. Like, to come in and say, oh, this rookie's going to win a bunch of games, especially a team that get the number 1 pick, probably means that team's not very good. That shouldn't decide the Rookie of the Year, and I don't think it will. But Defensive Player of the Year is a different thing. Your team, that does require your team to have a great defense, and they just don't. You know, like I said, with being whatever their record is, that and 24th best defense, that just doesn't work. But Wemby is 12th in the league in steals and first in blocks.
It's so crazy that he understands the concept of, oh, when it comes to Rookie of the Year, you're not on a good team, so I'm not going to grade you on how bad your record is or how bad your defense is. Like, I'm not going to do that. But then that same logic just tends to escape his mind. I just don't understand it. It's crazy to me how NBA players will complain about the lack of consistency when it comes to these awards and abide by that same level of inconsistency when they can actually watch the games, they see what's going on, and who's actually a great defender and who's not. This is the reason why, like, as much as people want to sit here, because I hear a lot of old heads saying, like, oh, back in the day, I'm going to put way more validity to those awards because his own peers voted him. Like, yeah, his own peers may have. Like, players back in the day, back in the 60s and 70s, they did. But even then, those people still were people. They still had biases. They still had skewed, warped perceptions of what was going on, right? So that doesn't amend them from not having the probably the most intelligent decision-making when it comes to handing out awards. And again, we can see Draymond Green, who is a player who is using a media trope on how he's deciding who is going to receive DPOY. Again, if Rudy Gobert wins it, I'm not going to be mad. Like, I think that, and Wemby's already said it, like, yo, this is going to be your last DPOY, brother, so just make sure you relish in it, because moving forward, I'm about to run it up something crazy, and I think that's actually what's going to happen anyway. So I'm not really here knocking Wemby one way or another, or Rudy Gobert for winning it. Like, I don't really care. But this idea that he can't be in a conversation because he's on a bad defensive team is crazy when we all know when he's on the floor, they're not a bad defensive team. And that should give even more credence to the conversation of why he should be in the conversation to win DPOY, because that team defensively is so bad that they dropped to being the worst in the league. Like that is in essence the same convo that many people have about winning the MVP. Oh, well, if you take him off this team, and how bad would they look if he's not on the floor? Like, we actually know what that is. We actually know how bad the team is defensively when Wemby's off the floor. Matter of fact, let's see how bad Minnesota is when Rudy Gobert is off the floor. Rudy Gobert, they have a defensive rating of 108. When Rudy Gobert is on the floor, they have a defensive rating of 106. And when he's off the floor, they have a defensive rating of 107, 108. Don't know what to tell you, dog. Like, that's just irrefutable evidence that Rudy Gobert is on a really, really great defensive team. And again, I have no problem with Gobert ceiling raising higher than what Wemby can do right now. And if you want to make the argument that that's the reason why he should win the award, that's fine. But again, like, bro, y'all make that exact same argument all the time when it comes to MVP. If you take this player off this team, how bad would they look? We actually know what that is for Wemby on this team defensively. We know what it is. To say that he can't be in the conversation to me is crazy.
All right, I seen these two stats on Twitter. I want y'all opinion in the comments because this is actually insane. So Jaren Jackson Jr. won Defensive Player of the Year last year. His stats was 189 blocks and 65 steals. Victor Wembanyama got 200 blocks and 76 steals already. Now, my first question to you is Victor Wembanyama about to win Rookie of the Year and Defensive Player of the Year? But most people in the media think the Defensive Player of the Year is going to Rudy Gobert. Now, this is what Wembanyama said to Rudy Gobert. Basically what he said, let him win it. But after this, that's your last one, gang. Now, if these are the two front runners for Defensive Player of the Year, there is no question about it. Victor Wembanyama is the better defensive player. Until he show me otherwise, especially in the playoffs, that he's not a defensive liability, especially on the perimeter, he's not getting Defensive Player of the Year from me.
What an idiot, ladies and gentlemen. And that right there is the reason why we have these conversations, because of dumb takes like that. To say that Rudy Gobert is a liability on the perimeter, when easily, outside of like Triple J, Bam, and AD, like Rudy Gobert is easily one of the better perimeter defenders from the big perspective. He is far from a liability. But if you want to call him a liability because he can't close out, or because he's trying to defend between somebody on the perimeter and also protecting the paint because he was spending his years in Utah when there was no other quality defender on the floor, so he's literally making up and I do mean trying to make up all of the different errors that everybody else was making, everyone else on that team was making. He's making up for all of those mistakes and errors or their liabilities, and because their inability to defend, now he has to make it up. This is the same thing I'm just sitting here saying with Wemby. Just because your team is bad defensively, that is not then meaning you're bad defensively. Stop being dumb. That's a bad take. Stupid take. Dumb take. Also, sitting here saying that, I'm not going to give somebody the DPOY or any award because of what they did in the playoffs. I'm not going to give them this regular season award because what they did in the postseason. You sound stupid. Straight dumb. I really do wish we get beyond talking narrative and actually talking basketball. To sit there and also to sit here and to say that Wemby is clearly a better defender than Rudy Gobert. Shut up! Wemby is not clearly a better defender. You're just stupid. You're dumb. You're saying ignorant things, moronic things for the lulz to get likes and interactions because you want to seem cool, dog. Stop making dumb takes. But yes, from a lot of numbers, a lot of statistics, Wemby is like dominating the NBA more so than anyone else. Victor Wembanyama already has more career blocks than 81% of all active NBA players. That is ridiculous. That's such a crazy stat. I don't even think I should just be blindly showing you this because I didn't even fact check it, but that's crazy. So yeah, Victor Wembanyama, like the numbers that Wemby's posting up is crazy, they're outrageous, they're dumb, they make literally 0 sense. But I sit here and I'm like, bro, why is it that he can't at least be in the conversation? If you bring up team success when we all know he's on a bad defensive team, and when he's on the floor, they actually are on par with what Rudy Gobert is doing, and when he's off the floor, they're on par with the Washington Wizards, at least be in the conversation. I think Wemby has been at worst a top 5 defender in the NBA, and if I can't say top 5, he's been at absolute best, the second best, or maybe even the best defensive player in the league, depending on what stretch of games we're referring to. As of late, I actually do believe he's been like the best defender in the league in the last like 15 games. But I still do think that Rudy Gobert, or either Rudy Gobert or Anthony Davis, in my opinion, those are the two best defensive players in the league. But hey, AD never gonna fucking win a DPOY playing on the Lakers because they don't never put adequate defensive players around him. So he's never gonna win it by the logic that Draymond Green provided us. Even though AD does a lot of the things that you would also look for in a defensive player, the versatility, the rim protection, the rebounding, all those things. The numbers from a team perspective won't back that up, but anybody just watching AD knows for a fact who he is as a defender. Yo, those are just my thoughts, yo. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Do y'all think Wemby should win DPOY or at least be in the conversation? If not, let me know down in the comment section below. Hit the subscribe button, notification bell, and until next time, I'll see you all later. Peace.